Chapter 1399. Xiaobai, give mother some time. Now is not the time. Jingyu sighed deeply and said, there are too many things waiting for me to do. Xiaobai, I also need your help with something. Can you help me? Mother, tell me. When Xiaobai heard Jingyu's words, a resolute expression appeared on his face. He stared at Jingyu with a moving gaze. Jingyu looked at Xiaobai's expression and nodded happily. After so many battles and so many failures, I finally understand that I have always been relying on my eyes. Jingyu sighed deeply and said, the other pupils aren't invincible. Since when did I rely on my eyes so much? Jingyu laughed involuntarily as she spoke. Her eyes flickered as she slowly said, the Holy Family and the Poison Sect only rely on the aristocratic families and the people of Miaojiang. So, the only thing I can do now is give up on the other pupils. I want to use my own forces to fight against the Holy Family. Jingyu's eyes flickered as she spoke. She turned to look at Xiaobai and said, the Holy Family exists on an island in the sea. In the future, I will definitely fight on the sea. So, Xiaobai, I need you to help me. Jingyu arched her eyebrows as she looked at Xiaobai and said, what you need to do is very simple. You need to become the king of the sea. You need to defeat the pirates and take over more and more forces. Become my support. Jingyu's golden-green eyes stared at Xiaobai as she spoke. Mother, I understand. When Xiaobai heard Jingyu's words, his eyes burned. Jingyu had said it so clearly. How could Xiaobai not understand what she meant? Although he didn't know what Jingyu meant by the several defeats she mentioned, Xiaobai was smart enough to understand. However, with Xiaobai's intelligence, he had already guessed that Jingyu must have experienced something that made her say such words. Who dared to bully his mother? He deserved to die. The expression on Xiaobai's face quickly changed, and he said firmly, Mother, don't worry. When you come back, I will be the overlord of the sea. We will definitely train an army that belongs to the sea for you. Okay, Jingyu looked up at Xiaobai and said, I'm very happy to have a godson like you. Jingyu wasn't wrong about Xiaobai. After talking to Jingyu, Xiaobai became busy. Looking at the people training on the deck, they were all bandits, but why did they listen to Xiaobai's words? Was this the respect for the strong? It had nothing to do with age or gender. It was only because this person was strong enough to conquer them. The corners of Jingyu's mouth revealed a faint smile. She stood at the door and watched Xiaobai practice archery. She looked at the group of people who were also doing their own things. If she could live like this, it wouldn't be a bad thing to spend the rest of her life on the sea. Boss, we finally know how you learned your archery skills. When the onlookers saw how accurate and powerful Xiaobai's arrows were, their eyes were filled with surprise as they said, it must have been Madam who taught you, right? That's right. Didn't you see the arrow Madam shot last time? Let me tell you, the way the arrow flew out, it was simply shocking. One of the soldiers exclaimed in horror. His words piqued everyone's curiosity. Chapter 1400. Yes. I saw it too. Another person quickly jumped out and said, do you know the posture of the madam when she pulls the bow? When I saw her drawing the bow, my legs went weak, let alone the arrow. That person said exaggeratedly, you don't know. Madam's murderous aura when she drew the bow, and her black robes were simply. That person thought for a long time but couldn't think of an adjective. After a long time, he slapped his thigh and said, in any case, it's intimidating. Jingyu stood not far away and heard the words of these people very clearly. The corners of her mouth suddenly curled up into a faint smile. She didn't expect that just a casual arrow would help Xiaobai win over people's hearts in an invisible way. We should go. Just as Jingyu was standing there thinking, the shadow turned his head slightly and said something, pulling Jingyu back from her thoughts. Emichim, Jingyu nodded slowly. She turned her head and looked in the direction the shadow was looking at. A city appeared in the distance. Jingyu was familiar with this place. She didn't expect to return to this place after going around in circles. Yangzhou City. Jingyu was slightly dazed as she looked at the harbor that was gradually appearing. Back then, when Jingyu was chased out of the Tokyo Imperial City, she fled for thousands of miles to Jinling. After such a long time, she returned to this place again. She was once again taking the same path as when she was fleeing and returning to the Tokyo Imperial City. Jingyu's eyes were filled with mockery. Now, in everyone's eyes, she was already dead. It was so difficult to enter Yangzhou City back then, but now, it was as easy as entering an uninhabited land. Back then, she and Xiaochen did everything they could to enter Yangzhou City. Jingyu only found out that Xiaochen was the sect master of the Nether sect when they were in Yangzhou City. Looking at the dock getting closer and closer, Jingyu's expression was a little absent-minded. Bits and pieces of her time with Xiaochen came to Jingyu's mind, and in an instant, the tip of Jingyu's nose turned sour. Back then, they had gone through fire and water countless times. But now, why had they become strangers? Mother, we're here. Jingyu suppressed her emotions. When she turned to look at Xiaobai, she saw the worry in his eyes. Xiaobai, do you still remember how I looked when I named you? Jingyu looked at Xiaobai's eyes. Her eyes were filled with longing. She missed the various experiences on that deserted island. Jingyu. I remember. Xiaobai nodded seriously and said, Father was the one who named me. Father said I wasn't called Xiaobai, so I'll be called Xiaohei. Ah. Hearing Xiaobai's words, Jingyu seemed to recall what had happened back then. Her eyes were filled with amusement. There were many thrills on the desolate island, but there were also many interesting things. That's right, Xiaobai. Jingyu looked at Xiaobai and said happily, Xiaochen gave you this name. Xiaobai looked at Jingyu's expression and gaze. He pursed his lips slightly and looked at Jingyu as he asked, Mother, are you thinking of father? Yes, I miss him a lot. Jingyu slowly lowered her eyes and looked at Xiaobai as she said, When we return to the Tokyo Imperial City, I'll be able to see him. Xiaobai blinked slightly and looked at Jingyu. Jingyu raised her hand and patted Xiaobai's head without saying anything. Jingyu and Yingying disembarked from the ship at the harbor. Xiaobai and the others continued to sail toward 5 Prefectures Bay. Chapter 1401. Jingyu stood on the pier and looked at the boat that was moving away. She looked at Xiaobai, who was standing at the bow of the boat and staring at her. Her mouth curved into a faint smile. Xiaobai has really grown up, let's go. Jingyu retracted her gaze and turned to walk into Yangzhou City. Seeing that Yangzhou City didn't seem to have changed much, her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She easily found an inn. This was the place where they used to live. After entering the inn, Jingyu washed up a little and went to sleep. Today, she will rest here for a day. Tomorrow, they will leave after buying a horse. Tokyo Imperial City. What is waiting for me in the Imperial City? Jingyu fell asleep. The long voyage on the sea didn't allow Jingyu to sleep well. The rocking of the ship was uncomfortable. Now that they were on land, she could finally have a good night's sleep. When Jingyu woke up, it was already dark. Jingyu was completely awakened by hunger. So hungry. Jingyu yawned and reluctantly got up to put on her clothes and prepare to go out to look for food. Jingyu opened the door and saw the shadow standing at the door. She slightly widened her eyes. The shadow silently withdrew the hand that was about to knock on the door and said faintly, I came to call you downstairs to eat. You really came at the right time. I am hungry. Jingyu blinked her eyes and looked at the shadow and said, Let's go. In the hall downstairs, Jingyu had eaten her fill and was sitting in the hall with nothing to do. She narrowed her eyes slightly and lay on the table, not wanting to move. Just as she was about to go upstairs to sleep, she heard the discussion at the next table. What? It's true. Fengju is going to play in the music house today? One of the men at the next table had a look of surprise in his eyes. His words attracted the attention of the people at the other tables. When they heard the man's words, their eyes were full of surprise. Of course it's true. I heard the people at the music house reveal the news with my own ears. The other man nodded again and said, But Fengju seems to think that it's too noisy, so he doesn't want people to watch. So you don't know, but now the music house's entrance is completely blocked. The entrance can't be entered, but there is no place to pass through the entrance. The man said exaggeratedly. Who is Fengju? Jingyu was interested. She slightly raised her eyebrows and asked this question. Suddenly, everyone's attention was attracted to her. "Miss, it's obvious that you're not locals, right? Even Feng Ju doesn't know about it." The person who spoke first looked at Jingyu from head to toe and said, "This young master is right, we are just passing through Yangzhou City." Jingyu lowered her head slightly and said to that person, "I heard your conversation just now. It was very interesting. I wonder who this Feng Ju is to be so popular." This Feng Ju. She is the #1 beauty in Yangzhou City, and she plays the zither very well. To be able to listen to Feng Ju play a song, to be able to see Feng Ju's face, I can die without regrets. The man said with a sigh. The meaning in his words made Jingyu raise her eyebrows in surprise. When did such a person appear in Yangzhou City? When these words were said, Jingyu saw the people around her nodding their heads in agreement. They all looked like they worshipped this person called Feng Ju. Jingyu suddenly became interested. Chapter 1402. She turned to the shadow and said, "It's so boring to stay in this inn. Why don't we go out for a walk?" When the shadow heard Jingyu asking about Feng Ju, he knew what Jingyu was thinking. He calmly raised his eyebrows, stood up and followed Jingyu to the street. Jingyu didn't need to ask where Feng Ju was because everyone on the street was running. She didn't need Jingyu to guess where they were running to. They were definitely going to look for Feng Ju. When Jingyu leisurely arrived at Feng Ju's music hall, there was already a sea of people at the entrance. Because the music hall didn't allow people to enter, these people blocked the entrance. Everyone wanted to get closer to the entrance so that they could hear the music coming from the music hall more clearly. Jingyu looked at this scene and was stunned. These people were really scary. What kind of person had such great ability? Jingyu turned to look at the shadow. Her gaze made the shadow's body tense up. What kind of gaze is this? Shadow, you know Qinggong, right? Jingyu looked at the shadow with a smile and asked. Yes. The shadow nodded. That's great. Come, fly me to the backyard. Let's find a good place to have a look. Jingyu said to the shadow after seeing the shadow nod. When the shadow heard Jingyu's words, his face suddenly twitched and he helplessly lowered his head. He knew that something bad was going to happen. In this music hall, compared to the chaos outside, it could be said to be incomparably quiet. There were only a dozen people sitting in the hall. But looking at the clothes of these people, it was obvious that they weren't ordinary people. They were definitely the kind that spent a lot of money. Jingyu calmly curled the corner of her mouth. Where were they now? On the roof beam. Jingyu and the shadow were squatting on the roof beam. They could clearly see everything that was happening on the stage from where they were. Moreover, no one would notice them. This place was simply a blind spot. Jingyu was full of admiration for the shadow. He could find a blind spot so casually. If it was her, she would find the best place to assassinate. However, she couldn't find a good place to hide. Jingyu and the shadow had just hidden themselves when they heard some movements coming from below. Jingyu slightly raised her eyebrows and sat down. She looked at the movements below. First, a woman came out and said something. She said that Feng Ju was going to play a song today and invited a few people to listen. Then, a figure slowly walked up from the side of the stage. The sound of her light footsteps and her light green clothes were elegant and beautiful. Her eyes were calm and tranquil, but they carried a sense of pride. She walked casually onto the stage with a zither in her hands. This scene was so familiar. Jingyu's eyes widened in an instant. This woman, today's song, Seeking Grace, was composed by this little girl for my benefactor. I only hope that if my benefactor passes by Yangzhou City, he will be able to hear this song. The woman's body was petite and her graceful body was very moving. Even the casual movement of sitting down was so seductive. Chapter 1403. This person was the famous Feng Ju in Yangzhou. When Feng Ju finished speaking, her eyes were filled with nostalgia. The zither was placed on her lap, and she was sitting on the ground. Jingyu looked at this scene and slowly pursed her lips. Her eyes were filled with memories of the past. At that time, she and Xiao Chen had fled to Yangzhou City and met the World Music Club. This woman was now the most famous woman in the world. Jingyu clearly remembered what she looked like at that time. Jingyu's eyes were a little absent-minded. It was as if she saw the fat woman who stood on the stage. That fat woman did not have a beautiful appearance and was even ugly. However, her skill in playing the zither was something that Jingyu could not forget. Back then, she had helped Jingyu before she left. She did not expect that this woman would remember her kindness until now. When the woman went on stage, because she was fat, she sat on the chair and the chair collapsed. She sat on the ground and placed the zither on her lap. She played a moving zither sound. Her body was no longer fat, but she was no longer willing to sit on a chair. Just like before, she sat on the ground. The zither in her hand was placed on her lap, and she played a moving zither. The gratitude expressed from the zither was so obvious. Jingyu sat on the beam and listened attentively. In a trance, he saw the plump woman walking with great difficulty on the riverbank with her zither in her arms. She also seemed to see the woman standing on the riverbank, shouting and asking for the girl's name. When the zither sound stopped, Jingyu's eyes were filled with a faint smile. That smile was magnified little by little, but it made Jingyu laugh. The moment the zither sound stopped, the entire hall was incomparably silent. Jingyu's laughter could be said to be incomparably abrupt. When Jingyu laughed, the shadow's body froze. There was only one thought in his mind. Did Jingyu eat the wrong medicine? She actually laughed at this time? Jingyu's laughter alarmed Fengju, who was playing the zither. After so long, Fengju heard someone laugh after listening to his zither. Fengju looked up and seemed to be looking for the person who laughed. Then he heard the laughter again. This time he heard it clearly. The laughter came from above. Everyone looked up and saw the woman sitting on the beam. She was dressed in black and had a veil on her face. Her face could not be seen clearly. "Miss, your zither skills are really unparalleled in the world." Jingyu quietly sat on the beam. Her eyes that were hidden under the black veil looked at Fengju and said, "I did not expect that I would have the honor of hearing your zither music when I pass by Yangzhou City again." Clang. After Jingyu's words, Fengju's expression suddenly changed. When he suddenly stood up, the zither fell to the ground and made a loud sound. Fengju's pitch-black eyes stared closely at Jingyu. His eyes were filled with joy. "Benefactor?" Fengju's lips trembled slightly. He did not expect that he would meet Jingyu under such circumstances. The moment he heard Jingyu's words, Fengju's chest crazily filled with the memories of the past. "The words I said in the past have come true today. Miss, your elegance is unparalleled in the world. You deserve the title of Fengju." Jingyu's lips curved slightly. Her words made Fengju's tears fall like rain. Chapter 1404. You owe me nothing. This is what you deserve. Jingyu squatted on the roof beam and looked at Fengju. She then turned to the shadow and said, "If you don't run now, you won't have another chance. Benefactor, please wait." When Fengju saw that Jingyu was about to leave, a look of anxiety appeared in his eyes. He raised his voice to call out to Jingyu, but Jingyu ignored him. Under everyone's gaze, she stepped on the roof beam and left. This series of events happened so quickly. Originally, everyone was still wondering who could cause Fengju to have such a big reaction. However, in the blink of an eye, this person disappeared. Fengju stood in place and looked in the direction that Jingyu left. He couldn't recover for a long time. When Jingyu and the shadow returned to the inn, the sky was already completely dark. Jingyu didn't feel anything about what she had done. However, she didn't know that she had caused a huge uproar in Yangzhou City. Jingyu was still sleeping when she heard the noise outside her room. It was so noisy that Jingyu had no choice but to open her eyes. She casually put on a piece of clothing and a veil. Just as she was about to go out, she heard a knock on the door. Jingyu frowned. She thought that it was the shadow knocking on the door. She yawned and helplessly opened the door. However, she was stunned by the person standing outside. "Fengju?" Jingyu looked at the woman in black standing in front of her. She was wearing a big hat that covered her face. "Benefactor, you are really here." The moment Fengju saw Jingyu, her eyes were filled with surprise. Jingyu didn't expect that Fengju would find her here. "Come in." Since she was here, there was no reason to drive her away. After letting Fengju in, Jingyu closed the door again. She didn't expect that when Jingyu sat down, Fengju suddenly knelt down. She was shocked and quickly went forward to pull Fengju up. However, she heard Fengju say, "Benefactor, my daughter Jingyu thanks Benefactor for your help. Quickly get up." Jingyu pulled Fengju up. When she heard Fengju's words, she knew that Fengju's real name was Di Xinyue. "Didn't I say that you don't owe me anything? This is what you deserve." Jingyu looked at Di Xinyue and said, "Even if I didn't remind you, you would have your own abnormalities as time passed. I just reminded you casually. To me, my benefactor saved my life." Di Xinyue shook her head stubbornly. She looked at Jingyu with eyes full of gratitude. "Forget it." Jingyu looked at Di Xinyue and shook her head helplessly. She didn't say anything else. "Benefactor, please tell me where you live." Di Xinyue looked at Jingyu pleadingly. She seemed to be afraid that Jingyu would leave. She said, "Benefactor didn't want to tell me your name twice. If I didn't ask around, I wouldn't know that Benefactor lives here. I'm afraid that Benefactor will leave again. It's better if you don't know my name." Jingyu shook her head helplessly. Her eyes were filled with bitterness. She said, "If you really want to repay me, then help me prepare horse rations and clothes." Chapter 1405. Benefactor is leaving? When Di Xinyue heard Jingyu's words, a look of astonishment appeared in her eyes. She said with a face full of surprise, "Yes, I'm just passing by." Jingyu slowly nodded in response. "Benefactor, are you in some kind of trouble?" Di Xinyue asked worriedly when she saw Jingyu covering her face, unwilling to see anyone. When Jingyu heard Di Xinyue's words, she slowly shook her head and said, "I'm fine." "You can't help this small Yangzhou city?" Jingyu slowly lowered her head and said with a faint smile, "I'll come back sooner or later. I just hope that when I come back, Miss Fengjue can open the city gates for me. I'll be satisfied." "Benefactor, don't worry, I understand." Di Xinyue heard something different from Jingyu's words. Jingyu didn't explain clearly and didn't say much either. Clearly, she didn't want to talk about this matter, or she couldn't do anything about it. "Benefactor, please wait for a moment. I'll go prepare some rations and horses for you." Di Xinyue bowed to Jingyu and turned to leave. With such a clever girl, it was no wonder that she could live so well in Yangzhou City. Di Xinyue indeed helped Jingyu prepare a horse, rations, and clothes. She even personally sent Jingyu out of the city gates. Standing at the city gates and watching Jingyu and the shadow leave, Di Xinyue fell into deep thought. "Miss, who is this benefactor?" The servant girl standing beside Di Xinyue was the one who helped her buy clothes this time. At this moment, she was standing in front of the city gates with Di Xinyue. She raised her head and asked Di Xinyue in confusion. "I don't know either." Di Xinyue shook her head slightly. Then, a faint smile appeared on her lips as she said faintly, "I'm very happy to be able to see my benefactor again and do something for her. As for her background, perhaps it's better not to know." When the servant girl heard Di Xinyue's words, she blinked her eyes curiously and didn't say anything else. The two leisurely walked back to the music hall. Jingyu's words echoed in Di Xinyue's ears. "She'll come back sooner or later. Then she'll help open the city gates." These words were said casually, but Di Xinyue heard a trace of seriousness in Jingyu's words. Perhaps Jingyu's meaning was very simple. She wanted Yangzhou City to be opened for her, to be used by her? Di Xinyue's footsteps suddenly stopped. In a trance, she seemed to have understood something. Her heart was beating clearly. Jingyu didn't know that her casual words had saved her a lot of trouble in the future and welcomed a great help. Jingyu also didn't know that her casual words had determined Di Xinyue's life. Perhaps if Jingyu hadn't said anything in advance, Di Xinyue wouldn't have been able to bear the ridicule and would have given up on herself. Or perhaps there were other factors. In Di Xinyue's opinion, Jingyu was her benefactor. She was someone she would use her entire life to thank and be grateful to. Wrong? A few days ago, did the governor of Yangzhou say that he wanted to listen to me play the zither? Di Xinyue tilted her head slightly and asked the servant girl beside her. Yes, she did, but she was rejected by Mississippi, the servant girl beside Di Xinyue, called Rong, heard Di Xinyue's words and nodded repeatedly. She replied, Miss also said that if any of these officials came in the future, she would reject them all. Chapter 1406. There's no need. Arrange for the prefect to come and listen to the zither, Di Xinyue suddenly said. Ah. Rong'er's eyes widened in shock. She looked at Jingyu and said, Young miss, why did you suddenly— I remember that the pavilion master of the Celestial Peak Pavilion said he wanted to listen to the zither as well, right? Find a time to arrange it. Di Xinyue's words caused the servant girl's eyes to widen. She said in disbelief, the pavilion master of the Celestial Peak Pavilion was so disrespectful to young miss. It's fine. I know what I'm doing. Di Xinyue smiled faintly and turned away without another word. Rong'er didn't understand Di Xinyue's actions at all. But ever since that day, Yangzhou City fell into a very strange situation. Everyone in the city seemed to revere one person, and the factions within the city suppressed each other. It seemed like there was an undercurrent, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't stir up a storm. It was as if someone was deliberately controlling everything. Jingyu didn't know anything about what was happening in Yangzhou City. She was officially on her way to the Tokyo Imperial City. She set out from Yangzhou and arrived at the Tokyo Imperial City. Jingyu was incomparably familiar with the path she took. It was on this mountain that she met the second young master of the poison sect, Yunjing. She went from Bianxing to Jadestone Pass. Once she entered Jadestone Pass, she was even closer to the Imperial City. After such a long time, Jingyu had finally returned to the Tokyo Imperial City. Standing in front of the city gates, Jingyu's heart couldn't help but tremble at the sight of the people coming and going. She's back, she's really back. Back then, she had been chased like that and fought her way out of the Tokyo Imperial City, becoming an existence reviled by the people of the world. Back then, Xiaochen had followed her through life and death. He had betrayed the country, the world, and the name of the 9 emperors. He had willingly become a rebel, all because of her. Xiaochen, I've come to find you. Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile. You've done so much for me back then, and now it's my turn to do the same for you. The Tokyo Imperial City was still bustling with life, and there seemed to be more new houses on the streets. There were also many new shops. However, there were no more Qianlai restaurants or Jingyu businesses in the Tokyo Imperial City. Back then, he had fled the Imperial City in such a hurry. He wondered what the people in the restaurant were like now. Jingyu led her horse along the streets and looked at the shops that had changed dynasties. Her eyes were filled with nostalgia as she walked forward step by step. She was about to reach the residence of the 9th emperors, but Jingyu suddenly stopped. Let's find a place to stay for today. I'll inform the crown princess of your return. The shadow stood by Jingyu's side and spoke indifferently. Jingyu lowered her head and didn't say anything else. The carriage of the 9th emperors is here. Make way. Make way. Jingyu's heart trembled violently when she heard the name of the 9th emperors. This scene was extremely familiar. Jingyu tilted her head slightly and looked at the side of the road. A pitch-black carriage was heading towards Jingyu's direction. She stood behind the crowd and looked at the carriage as it drove over. In a daze, she seemed to have returned to the beginning. Jingyu had heard the name of the 9th emperors for the first time in the border city of the Roman forest. It was also at that time that the two of them met. Chapter 1407. Jingyu looked towards Xiaochen's carriage and saw with her own eyes that the carriage was heading towards the mansion of the 9th emperors. Jingyu watched as the carriage passed by her. Although they were so close to each other, she felt as if they were thousands of miles apart. Xiaochen, I'm back. Jingyu looked at the carriage and was about to withdraw her gaze when she suddenly saw a hand reach out from the carriage. It seemed to be a slender finger. The moment Jingyu saw the hand, her body suddenly stiffened. There was a woman in Xiaochen's carriage. In Jingyu's memory, how could Xiaochen allow a woman to enter his carriage? Let's go. Jingyu took a deep breath and suppressed the chaotic thoughts in her heart. She turned around and left in the other direction. The shadow looked in the direction Xiaochen's carriage left and followed Jingyu's footsteps towards the inn. When Jingyu saw Lu Miaoqiu, it was already the second half of the night. When the shadow brought Lu Miaoqiu to the inn, Jingyu was sitting in front of the window and thinking about the overall cause and effect of the matter. During this period of time, too many things had happened. Winter was coming and the night was a little cold. Jingyu lowered her head slightly and gathered the clothes on her body. Then, she heard the sound of footsteps coming from outside the room. Knock knock. The sound of knocking was heard. Jingyu quickly stood up and opened the door. Lu Miaoqiu was standing outside the door in a pitch-black dress. The two didn't even have time to look at each other and hurriedly entered the room and closed the door. Lu Miaoqiu lifted the hat on her head and looked at Jingyu excitedly. Seeing Jingyu standing in front of her, Lu Miaoqiu's eyes were filled with tears. Miaoqiu! Jingyu's face was also filled with excitement. She raised her hands and hugged Lu Miaoqiu. The two held hands and sat down at the side. Time is of the essence, I can't go into details. Lu Miaoqiu looked outside the door and knew that the shadow was standing guard outside. She raised her hand and held Jingyu's hand and said, "Listen to me, the Tokyo's situation is very dangerous now. I've found out everything I can. The 9 emperors are back. I believe you already know." This was the first thing Lu Miaoqiu said. Jingyu nodded, indicating that she knew. Although the 9 emperors are back, the 9th emperors are being controlled. Lu Miaoqiu continued to look at Jingyu and said, "A woman moved into the 9th emperor's residence. She called herself the 9th emperor's elder sister. Nailin Yu moved in and obviously controlled Xiaochen. I only found out that Xiaochen was being controlled because he was poisoned." Lu Miaoqiu's face was cold as she said, "The imperial palace has become Ning Xiangyuan's world. Now that the emperor is dying, Ning Xiangyuan and Nailin Yu are working together to control the entire imperial palace. And you, Jingyu?" Lu Miaoqiu slowly stared at Jingyu and said, "When Xiaochen was brought back to the Tokyo, he was unconscious for an entire month. During this month, the imperial palace issued a new order. In the imperial palace, no one is allowed to mention the 9th imperial concubine or Jingyu. If they do, it will be a capital offense." Chapter 1408. In the beginning, many people would still mention it. However, after Ning Xiangyuan's bloody massacre, no one dared to say a word. Lu Miaoqiu sighed deeply. Although Lu Miaoqiu had only said a few words, Jingyu could sense the seriousness in Lu Miaoqiu's words. It seemed that this new rule had been washed with blood. Otherwise, how could it achieve such an effect? "I understand." Jingyu nodded slowly. She understood the current situation and lowered her head without saying a word. The imperial city is now in a precarious situation. If you stay here, you'll be in the most danger zone. However, I had no choice but to bring you here. Lu Miaoqiu took a deep breath and said, "Linglan and Jinglang are safe in the Roman forest. However, their military strength has been greatly reduced and the relationship between the countries is on the verge of collapse. The Tokyo is extremely ambitious and wants to annex the other 3 countries. That's why he entered the Holy Family. Jingyu, the only thing we can do now is to seek victory in the midst of danger." Lu Miaoqiu looked deeply at Jingyu and said, "In the imperial city, you're the only one who can awaken Xiaochen. As long as we can awaken Xiaochen, we'll fight the tiger in this wolf's den and take down the Tokyo." Lu Miaoqiu looked deeply at Jingyu and said, "However, if someone discovers your whereabouts, what awaits us is death. Jingyu, we have no other choice." Lu Miaoqiu's words echoed in Jingyu's ears. Jingyu lowered her head and said nothing. "I already know everything about the battle in Jinling." Lu Miaoqiu slowly turned her head to look at Jingyu and said, "Since then, the sound attack aristocrat family has disappeared without a trace. Before they left, they took Yishui with them. Bai Jiao has been all over the world looking for Yishui, but there is still no news of her." "How could this be?" Jingyu's eyes widened when she heard the news from Lu Miaoqiu. "I'm trying my best to track it down." Lu Miaoqiu sighed deeply and said, "The witchcraft of Miaojiang is too powerful. I don't know who hasn't been controlled in the imperial city." Lu Miaoqiu sighed deeply and said, "Those goo worms are everywhere. If it wasn't for Yijuan, perhaps, the people in the crown prince's eastern palace would have been spared." "Yijuan?" Jing Yu's eyes widened. Lu Miaoqiu nodded and said, "Did you forget? Back then, Yijuan followed by Qing Ji's side for a long time and learned a lot of medical skills. He has been researching medicine for so many years and has made some achievements." "Oh right, I almost forgot." When Jing Yu heard this, she nodded in realization. Her eyes were filled with nostalgia. Back then, everything that happened in the prince's residence made Jing Yu feel a little suffocated. "Jing Yu, I'll leave it to you now. The crown prince and I will be your backup. If you can take down Madame Nye and Nailan Yu, leave the palace to me." Lu Miaoqiu stood up and said, "It's getting late, I have to go." "Shut up." Lu Miaoqiu turned around and called. The shadow outside the door stepped in. "Your favor has been repaid. You're free now. I'm willing to hire you to work for Jing Yu. You can name the price. Are you willing?" Lu Miaoqiu calmly looked at the shadow and said these words, which made the shadow's body stiffen. Chapter 1409. She raised her head and looked at Lu Miaoqiu for a long time. Then, she turned her head to look at Jing Yu. In the end, she helplessly lowered her head and said, "I'm willing." Lu Miaoqiu seemed to be certain that the shadow would agree. She slowly curved the corners of her mouth and turned to Jing Yu. "This is all I can help you with. Here are the banknotes. I only brought this with me when I came out in a hurry. It should be enough for your expenses for a few days. Jing Yu, I'll wait for your good news." Lu Miaoqiu left. However, the atmosphere in the inn became even more serious. Jing Yu sat in her original position and thought about Lu Miaoqiu's words. The expression in her eyes became more serious. "How do I hide this pair of eyes?" Jing Yu lowered her head in depression. It seemed that she needed to make some preparations. "Shadow, go find Lu Miaoqiu and get more money. We need to do something big." The shadow looked at Jing Yu in confusion. However, she still obeyed. In any case, the crown prince's palace should have a lot of money. Jing Yu silently complained. The shadow twitched slightly but didn't say anything. If the crown prince heard this, he would definitely be angered to death. It was obvious that the crown prince was angered to death. "Lu Miaoqiu, do you think I'm running a bank?" Xiao Yuling shouted at Lu Miaoqiu with an ashen face. "You're the crown prince. I only took a small amount of money from you. Why are you so angry?" Lu Miaoqiu sat calmly to the side. She held a teacup in one hand and lowered her eyes. Her gentle and moving appearance caused Xiao Yuling to grit her teeth. "Did I spoil you too much? Is that why you're so lawless?" Xiao Yuling stood up and walked to Lu Miaoqiu's side. She raised her hand and pinched Lu Miaoqiu's chin, forcing Lu Miaoqiu to look up at her. "Since your highness is like this, why don't you take in a few more concubines? That way, there will be more people to make you happy. I think the woman who gave your highness a sachet last time is pretty good. What do you think, your highness?" Lu Miaoqiu raised her head and smiled at Xiao Yuling. When Xiao Yuling heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, her body froze. Then she slowly bent down and leaned closer to Lu Miaoqiu. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "My crown princess, are you still jealous?" "I didn't." Lu Miaoqiu angrily flung Xiao Yuling's hand away. She stood up and said, "It's getting late. Your highness, you should return to your chambers to rest. Hasn't that matter been in the past for so long?" Xiao Yuling unhappily grabbed Lu Miaoqiu's hand and said, "This time, you didn't discuss it with me and made a decision on your own. We're even now." "Who's even with you? Let me do it." Lu Miaoqiu flung Xiao Yuling's hand away in disdain and turned to walk into the room. Xiao Yuling looked at Lu Miaoqiu and calmly shrugged. However, there was a faint smile in her eyes. Just like that, she followed Lu Miaoqiu into the palace. Lu Miaoqiu looked at Xiao Yuling, who followed her in and instantly widened her eyes in anger. Xiao Yuling laughed loudly and went up to hug Lu Miaoqiu. "You've been in a cold war with me for so long. Now that you've made a mistake, do you want me to apologize to you?" Xiao Yuling looked at Lu Miaoqiu and said. Chapter 1410. I didn't say anything. Lu Miaoqiu couldn't break free. When she heard Xiao Yuling's words, she turned her head away unhappily. "I really don't know what to do with you." Xiao Yuling lowered her head helplessly. She leaned over and kissed Lu Miaoqiu's forehead. I'm not angry at you for spending money. It's just that you've been avoiding talking to me recently. Something big must have happened this time, right? If something happened to you, what would I do? Xiao Yuling looked deeply at Lu Miaoqiu. I didn't say I wouldn't tell you. Lu Miaoqiu turned her head away uncomfortably. HM? Then shouldn't you tell me now? Xiao Yuling raised her eyebrows slightly as she looked at Lu Miaoqiu. Lu Miaoqiu looked seriously at Xiao Yuling. She smiled faintly and said, I heard that Miss Dong sent some pastries to the Crown Prince yesterday. I wonder if the pastries tasted good, Your Highness? Xiao Yuling's mouth twitched. Without another word, she picked up Lu Miaoqiu and walked towards the bed. I'll try it right now. Are the pastries tasty? Xiao Yuling, put me down. Lu Miaoqiu turned pale with fright. The Crown Prince's eastern palace was probably the only pure land in the imperial city. When Xiao Yuling found out that Jingyu was coming, her first thought was to send people to protect her. The money that was sent over made Jingyu extremely happy. She was practically beaming with joy. Jingyu took the money and bought a small residence at the edge of the mountain behind the prince's residence. She lived there peacefully. The people sent by the Crown Prince protected the residence. The courtyard wasn't big, but because it was close to the prince's residence, Jingyu was very satisfied. Have you found out where the 9 emperors are going? Jingyu stood in the room dressed in black. She tilted her head and asked the shadow. Tomorrow, the 9 emperors are going to the Jinyan Pavilion. The shadow slowly lowered her head. When Jingyu heard the name of the Jinyan Pavilion, her expression froze. She then lowered her head in amusement. She didn't think that the Jinyan Pavilion was still around. Jingyu slowly nodded. Dongqing Imperial City was bustling with noise and excitement. Xiao Chun sat in the carriage and stared blankly at the wall of the carriage. The dark carriage stopped at Jinyan Tower. Xiao Chun lowered his eyes and walked in with a cold expression. Xiao Chun sat alone in his elegant room on the 2nd floor of the Jinyan restaurant. His eyes were looking out the window, and no one knew what he was thinking. Just as he was lost in thought, he suddenly saw a petite figure on the street that attracted his attention. Xiao Chun sat up straight. Just as he was about to take a closer look, he realized that the figure had disappeared. Just as Xiao Chun was frowning, there was a sound from the door of the quiet room. The guard beside Xiao Chun also frowned when he heard the sound. Just as he was about to do something, he saw the door of the room being pulled open. A thin and small woman with a hunched back and a scar on her face walked into the room. Her eyes were covered with a layer of black cloth. She held a walking stick in her hand as she walked into the room. However, the moment she stepped into the room, she stopped in her tracks. So I came to the wrong place. The woman's voice was strangely hoarse. She shook her head as if she found it funny. Then, she turned to leave. Chapter 14:11. This scene caused the guards to widen their eyes. From the beginning to the end, none of them had made a single sound. The woman in front of them was clearly blind, but she had sensed that there was someone in the room the moment she stepped into the room. Furthermore, she knew that she had walked in the wrong direction. How could they not be shocked? Miss, please wait a moment. The guard raised his voice and called out to Jingyu, who was about to leave. What's the matter? The woman stopped in her tracks indifferently and turned to look at the person who had spoken. Miss, how did you know that there was someone in the room? We didn't even speak just now. The guard sized up the woman curiously. The woman in front of him smiled slightly. It was obvious that this woman was Jingyu, who was pretending to be blind. For Jingyu, who had really been blind before, this was nothing more than being blind again. It was really easy. Even though I'm blind, I'm not deaf. Jingyu smiled faintly. She didn't seem to have any intention of saying anything. She used the walking stick in her hand to explore the path before she turned to leave. Just as Jingyu turned around, Xiao Chen, who was sitting on his seat, opened his mouth and laughed. Interesting. Xiao Chen spoke faintly. He turned his head to look at Jingyu and said, Since you've walked in the wrong direction, why don't you make the best of it? Sit down and have a cup of tea before you leave. Jingyu paused when she heard Xiao Chen's words. As expected, Xiao Chen had spoken to persuade her to stay. Jing Yu turned around and said, "The ninth emperor's lowered himself to drink tea with a blind person like me. Did I hear wrongly? This king is very curious that Miss has such good hearing." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said this. Jing Yu sneered and ignored him. She said calmly, "I still want to live a little longer. The smell of the ninth emperor's will kill me." Jing Yu threw out this sentence faintly and quickly turned to leave. When Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words, his expression instantly froze. The guards looked at each other, not understanding what Jing Yu meant. Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu as she slowly walked down the stairs. He fell into deep thought. This blind person had obviously approached him on purpose. Otherwise, why would she say something like that? She had clearly said that she had walked into the wrong room, but went downstairs directly after she left. But what did Jing Yu's words mean? Xiao Chen fell into deep thought. He sat in his seat and pondered for a long time, but he couldn't come up with an answer. In the prince's residence, the sky was already dark when Xiao Chen returned. The moment he stepped into the prince's residence, he saw the person walking towards him. It was a woman wearing a dark purple robe. She didn't look very old, but her voluptuous body was so alluring. Her face was somewhat similar to Xiao Chen's. You're back?" This woman was obviously Madame Nie, who was from Yaojiang and was skilled in witchcraft. How could Jing Yu not recognize her? Xiao Chen responded indifferently when he saw Madame Nie, then turned to leave. Madame Nie didn't get angry when she saw Xiao Chen's actions. When she saw Xiao Chen's figure disappear, she stopped a guard and asked, "Who did Xiao Chen meet today?" Replying to Madame Nie, "Ninth Imperial Uncle is drinking tea alone in the brocade banquet hall as usual," the guard replied respectfully. Madame Nie nodded slowly. After hearing the guard's report, she felt relieved and lowered her head slowly. She didn't understand why Xiao Chen liked to sit alone in Jinyan building ever since he came back from the Holy Family. Chapter 1412. She originally thought there was some inside story she didn't know about, but after observing for a long time, she didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Xiao Chen was still the same as always, so Madame Nie just let Xiao Chen be. Xiao Chen walked into his study and sat down by the desk. He picked up the book and started reading. When the guard beside him saw that Xiao Chen's actions were normal, he lowered his eyes and stood to the side to wait on him. Interrogation Officer 1. "Are you back?" Xiao Chen suddenly asked as he was reading a book when the guard finally came to a stop. "Soon." The guard heard Xiao Chen's words and paused for a moment before replying. "That's good." Xiao Chen nodded and said in confusion, "I almost forgot what Xing Yi went to do." After Xiao Chen said that, a hint of surprise appeared in the guard's eyes. He furrowed his brows and seemed to be in deep thought. Fortunately, Xiao Chen seemed to have just casually said that and then went back to his room to rest. After Jing Yu returned to her room, she removed the things on her face and changed into a new set of clothes. She sat on a chair and poured herself a cup of water. She coughed and her voice returned to normal. "Miss Yu." The shadow called her. Jing Yu put down the cup and looked at the shadow. "How was it? Did you get the map of the prince's estate?" The shadow slowly nodded. She raised her hand and placed the item in her arms in front of Jing Yu. Jing Yu raised her hand and took it. She opened the map and a smile appeared in her eyes. Jing Yu was very familiar with the layout of the mansion. However, the layout of the guards wasn't the same as before, so Jing Yu had to get another one. When she saw the map, Jing Yu smiled faintly. She looked up at the shadow and said, "I'll personally go take a look tonight. Don't worry, I won't be exposed." When the shadow heard Jing Yu's words, she frowned in disapproval. However, she seemed to have thought of something and nodded slowly. Jing Yu memorized the layout of the prince's estate. She changed her clothes and went to the back mountain of the prince's estate. She silently snuck into the prince's estate and walked unimpeded. A faint smile appeared in her eyes. Jing Yu arrived at Xiao Chen's master bedroom with ease. The person sleeping in the room was Xiao Chen. However, Jing Yu could only stand by the window and take a look. She didn't dare to enter the room. When the window was opened, she could vaguely see Xiao Chen's figure moving around in the room. Jing Yu hid in the tree outside the window. Her golden-green eyes stared at the scene in the room. Jing Yu's eyes revealed a strange color. When Jing Yu was looking at Xiao Chen, she suddenly saw Xiao Chen holding onto a chair. His face was pale, but he forced himself to walk to the window. He closed the window and extinguished the light. Jing Yu saw this scene and her heart trembled. She seemed to have sensed something strange. What's wrong with Xiao Chen? Why do I feel like he's suppressing something? Jing Yu frowned slightly. When Jing Yu was about to take action, she suddenly heard footsteps. Jing Yu quickly shrank her body. Then she saw a woman appear in the corridor. The woman was holding a bowl of medicine and walking towards Xiao Chen's room. Chapter 14:13. As the servant girl approached, Jing Yu's eyes were filled with astonishment. The servant girl was none other than Yin Xiao. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with shock as she watched Yin Xiao enter Xiao Chen's room. After a while, Yin Xiao came out with an empty bowl. It was obvious that the medicine in the bowl was drunk by Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen was sick? Looking at Xiao Chen's appearance today, she couldn't tell at all. He didn't look like someone who was sick. If he wasn't sick, why would he drink medicine for no reason? Jing Yu's eyes were filled with confusion. She thought for a moment and followed Yin Xiao. Before confirming Yin Xiao's stance, Jing Yu wouldn't show herself no matter what. However, she could still follow Yin Xiao to see what was going on. After Yin Xiao delivered the medicine, she walked towards the other side of the courtyard. Jing Yu followed her in the dark and watched Yin Xiao carry the empty bowl into a room. The person sitting in the room was definitely the person who made this medicine. Jing Yu carefully leaned against the window and listened to the faint sounds coming from the room. Finished drinking? A familiar voice was heard and instantly made Jing Yu's body tremble. She remembered this voice. It was Madame Nie's. It was the person from Yaojiang who claimed to be Xiao Chen's older sister. Replying to Madame, "It's all finished." Yin Xiao lowered her head and moved the bowl forward slightly, indicating for Madame Nie to see that the medicine in the bowl was empty. "Very good. You may leave." Madame Nie seemed to be very satisfied with this and nodded slightly with a smile in her eyes. Yin Xiao bowed in acknowledgement, stood up, and left with the empty bowl. Jing Yu frowned slightly and pondered for a moment before turning to leave. Jing Yu didn't expose herself and returned to the courtyard. Jing Yu didn't know if it was her misconception, but she felt that Xiao Chen's condition must be related to this medicine. She must investigate it when she had the chance. For the next few days, Jing Yu wandered outside with the identity of a blind person during the day and wandered around the prince's residence at night. After so many days, Jing Yu finally found something strange. Why did Jing Yu feel that there was something else between Yin Xiao's delivery of medicine and Xiao Chen? Just as Jing Yu wanted to investigate, Jing Yu saw someone she didn't expect. Xiao Chen went to Jinyan Hall to meditate as usual. However, the person following Xiao Chen today was actually Xing Yi. Jing Yu hid in the dark and watched Xing Yi and Xiao Chen walk into the inn. The moment she saw Xing Yi, Jing Yu's mind went blank. If Xiao Chen was being controlled, then what was going on with Xing Yi? Jing Yu's heart skipped a beat, and she made a plan. The moment Xiao Chen entered the private room, Jing Yu raised her hand and shot out a secret signal, successfully attracting Xing Yi's attention. Jing Yu ran away and Xing Yi really chased after her. His speed made Jing Yu speechless. However, Jing Yu's advantage lay in her nimble body. When she saw Interrogation Officer 1 chasing after her, Jing Yu decisively snuck into the dark alley like a cat after a while. Xing Yi turned around and landed. The moment his feet touched the ground, a dagger was pressed against his throat. Jing Yu stood behind Xing Yi, her hand holding onto Xing Yi's back. Jing Yu didn't say anything. Chapter 14:14. The atmosphere between the two of them was strange, and Xing Yi didn't dare to move. In this strange situation, Xing Yi suddenly trembled and called out, "Madam?" After Xing Yi called out, Jing Yu slowly removed the dagger in her hand. She let go of Xing Yi's hand and watched as he turned around. His clear eyes were filled with surprise as he looked at Jing Yu. Jing Yu's tense heart slowly relaxed. "Xing Yi, you still remember me?" Jing Yu looked at Xing Yi, her golden green eyes sparkling with joy. "Madam." Xing Yi suddenly knelt down in front of Jingyu. His eyes were filled with excitement, and his voice trembled as he called out, "Madam, you're still alive. Master even said that you've already—" "Of course I'm still alive." Jingyu smiled helplessly. Just as she was about to say something, her body suddenly froze. What did Xing Yi just say? What did you say? What did Xiaochen say about me? Jingyu's mind went blank, and her eyes were filled with shock. "Madam, this matter can't be explained in such a short time. I'll look for you tonight." Xing Yi looked around and said this to Jingyu. After he found out Jingyu's address, he turned and ran. Jingyu stood in place, her heart trembling violently. For the entire day, Jingyu's mind was filled with Xing Yi's words. It was as if something wanted to rush out of her chest, but Jingyu was afraid. Suppressing it again and again, Jingyu was incomparably anxious. After waiting bitterly for an entire day, she finally heard a sound in the middle of the night. Xing Yi was welcomed into the room. "Xing, you're here." Jingyu saw the anxiety in Xing Yi's eyes. Xing Yi bowed slightly to Jingyu, then said to Jingyu, "I can't stay for too long. Master wanted me to pass on this message to Madam. Master's situation is very dangerous now. Without Master's special orders, Master wanted me to tell Madam not to act rashly." Xing Yi looked at Jingyu and said slowly, "Xing Yi, what did you say? Xiaochen wanted you to tell me this? Did Xiaochen remember me? Why didn't he come and see me?" Jingyu's voice was trembling fiercely. Looking at Jingyu's appearance, Interrogation Officer 1 only felt his throat dry up. However, he silently swallowed his saliva and said, "Madam, after Master returned from the Holy Family, he recovered some of his memories intermittently. I wasn't able to stay by Master's side because Madam Nye locked me up." Xing Yi clenched his fists and said, "If I didn't have Sir Qingji's medicine to block it, I'm afraid I would have been infected by the goo poison." "What happened to Xiaochen?" Jingyu asked impatiently. After Master returned from the Holy Family, he knew something was wrong with him, but he didn't show it. He pretended that he was still infected with the goo poison. This subordinate is the same. We're all acting. It's too complicated, so I can't explain it to Madam right away. Master said that Madam must take good care of yourself. You mustn't leave the mansion during this time and wait for Master's news, Xing Yi said vaguely. "Xing Yi, can you let me see Xiaochen?" Jingyu looked at Xing Yi and asked. "Madam, you can only see him from afar in Jinyan Tower. You can't go near him." Xing Yi frowned deeply and said, "Madam, you mustn't expose yourself. Otherwise, Master won't be able to hold on." Chapter 14-15. Got it. Jingyu's heart trembled violently. Interrogation Officer 1 hurriedly left behind a few words and left once again. Jingyu sat on the chair in the room just like that. She raised her hands and hugged her knees, clenching her teeth tightly. Jingyu clearly felt terrible when she found out that Xiaochen had forgotten about her. Now that she found out that Xiaochen's memory was recovering, Jingyu actually felt so terrible. Xiaochen, I really miss you so much." Tokyo's imperial city was in turmoil, and it was even more so in the prince's estate. Madame Nye seemed to have sensed something, and Jingyu could clearly sense that something special was happening in the prince's estate. Jingyu was a bit uneasy. She didn't receive any news for 3 days in a row. On the 4th day, Jingyu finally saw Xiaochen in Jinyan restaurant. Jingyu sat next to a small stall diagonally across from Jinyan restaurant. She could see Xiaochen if she raised her head slightly, and Xiaochen could see Jingyu if he lowered his head slightly. The two of them sat quietly in their seats, and their gazes finally met amidst the countless passers-by. Jingyu only raised her head for a split second, but in that split second, she saw the person she desperately wanted to see. In that split second, Jingyu once again saw the gentleness in that pair of cold eyes. That sentimental gentleness almost caused Jingyu's heart to completely collapse in that split second. Xiaochen. It was her Xiaochen. Jingyu's eyes suddenly moistened the moment she met Xiaochen's gaze. She only looked at him for a split second before looking away and expressionlessly covering her eyes again. Almost no one knew that Xiaochen and Jingyu had met in that split second. Jingyu was still blind, So she walked away shakily with her walking stick. Only the heavens knew how much pain Jingyu was suppressing herself. The moment she saw Xiao Chen, Jingyu wanted nothing more than to rush up to him. However, she couldn't. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't even take another look. In Jingyu's opinion, this one look was already an incomparably extravagant thing. At the very least, she would know that Xiao Chen was back. Jingyu turned and left. Xiao Chen kept staring out of the window. When no one else could see him, Xiao Chen clenched his fists tightly and then slowly loosened them. He seemed to be looking out of the window, but also seemed to be in a daze. Ninth Emperors, it's time to go back. The guard beside him called out. Xiao Chen turned his head indifferently and responded expressionlessly. Then, he stood up and left without hesitation. The guards were puzzled by Xiao Chen's actions. They didn't understand why Xiao Chen would sit there alone. He didn't seem to be doing anything. He also didn't seem to be paying attention to anyone. He just sat there calmly for the entire afternoon. Jingyu would wander around outside the Jinyan restaurant almost every day. However, Xiao Chen didn't seem to come as frequently. Jingyu couldn't enter Xiao Chen's line of sight. Therefore, the two of them were in a very strange situation. Neither of them could see the other. They could only act as if they didn't know each other. They walked past each other indifferently as if they were looking at air. Jingyu would only appear a long time after Xiao Chen left. She would step on the path that Xiao Chen had walked. Her heart throbbed with pain. The prince's estate was completely silent. Madame Nye was the most powerful person in the prince's estate. She controlled almost everyone and everything. Nailan Yu was also glued to Xiao Chen like glue. In this delicate moment, the rumors spread that the Ninth Emperor was going to marry an imperial concubine. Chapter 14:16. The moment these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed. The Ninth Imperial Concubine. No one in the imperial city dared to mention this word. But now, such a thing happened. They originally thought it was just a rumor, but who would have thought that the Ninth Emperors would enter the imperial palace to request for an edict or something else? When Jingyu heard this news, she was changing into black clothes in her courtyard. What did you say? Jingyu suddenly turned to look at the shadow. Her eyes were filled with astonishment as she said, Xiao Chen is getting married? Yes, the edict has been issued. The shadow nodded slowly. Jingyu's expression changed. Then she left without saying a word. When she arrived at the city gate, she quickly glanced at the imperial list. Then she lowered her head and walked to the other side. When she walked out of the alley, Jingyu's eyes were covered with a black cloth. She walked forward bit by bit, trembling. Just as Jingyu walked a few steps, someone bumped into her. That person apologized profusely, helped Jingyu up, and walked away. Jingyu didn't say anything and walked further away. When Jingyu walked into a dark alley, Jingyu slowly opened her hand. A piece of paper appeared in her palm. Jingyu slowly unfolded the paper. The words on it made Jingyu's lips curl into a faint smile. On the day of my wedding, I will meet you. These words made Jingyu's eyes burn with passion. This was Xiao Chen's handwriting. It clearly showed that everything was arranged by Xiao Chen. Looking at Xiao Chen's handwriting, Jingyu felt incomparably relieved. The biggest event in the imperial city recently was probably the marriage of the ninth imperial uncle. The imperial edict for the marriage was issued in such a hurry. What made people laugh was that the wedding date was set to be 10 days later. It was so anxious. It was as if they were afraid that the Ninth Emperors would go back on their word. However, some people felt that it was a forced marriage. Back then, the Ninth Emperors and the Empress with different pupils caused a huge commotion. Now, the Ninth Emperors suddenly returned and issued a ban. No one was allowed to mention anything about the Empress with different pupils. Anyone with half a brain would be able to figure out the twists and turns in this matter. But even if they knew, no one would say anything. When it came to matters of the imperial family, one extra word could lead to death. Miss Nailan, are you satisfied with my arrangements? Madame Nye sat high up in the seat of honor in the prince's estate. Her pitch-black eyes curved as she looked at Nailan Yu with a smile. Madame Nye really keeps her word. Nailan Yu's lips curved into a faint smile, her eyes filled with joy. She looked at Madame Nye and said, "Don't worry, since Madame Nye has kept her word, this miss will naturally keep her word as well. The poison sect is at Madame Nye's disposal." Nailan Yu's smile deepened as she beamed at Madame Nye. "Ha!" Madame Nye laughed heartily and stood up. "That's great. The people from the Holy Family will be arriving soon. After your wedding, the Tokyo will change dynasties." Chapter 1417. Madame Nye's voice was filled with viciousness as her lips slowly curved into a cruel smile. "The throne of the Tokyo still returned to my hands in the end. Xiao Shiming, do you think you can keep the Tokyo just because you banished me?" Her faint voice echoed in the room. Nailan Yu looked at Madame Nye's back with a hint of shock in her eyes. Then she slowly lowered her head and didn't say anything. A storm was brewing in the Tokyo Imperial City. Over the past few days, there had been an endless stream of people entering the Tokyo Imperial City. Their clothes and auras were truly frightening. Jing Yu also hadn't taken a single step out of her room in the past few days. She held the note Xiao Chen wrote and read it over and over again, her eyes filled with longing. "Miss Yu." The shadow's voice rang out from outside. Jing Yu turned around and saw the shadow steadily walking toward Jing Yu with food in hand. "Since when did you have to deliver food?" Jing Yu looked at Shadow as he placed the tray on the table. She curled her lips into a smile and looked up at Shadow as she asked. When the shadow heard Jing Yu's words, it furrowed its brows in a seemingly conflicted manner. It looked at Jing Yu and said, "You haven't eaten properly in a long time." Jing Yu was startled when she heard the shadow's words. She looked at the shadow strangely and said faintly, "I can't eat alone. How about you sit down and eat with me? I'm a subordinate." When the shadow heard Jing Yu's words, a hint of surprise appeared in its eyes. "What does that have to do with anything? I treat you as a friend. It's normal for friends to eat together. Hurry and sit down before calling someone to bring a set of chopsticks." Jing Yu excitedly pulled the shadow to one side and sat down. The shadow lowered its head and looked at the hand that was holding it. The expression on its face changed rapidly. Jing Yu really did what she said. The shadow sat stiffly at the table and watched Jing Yu eat happily. It seemed that she really had a good appetite because someone was eating with her. "Why are you looking at me like that? Hurry up and eat." Jing Yu blinked as she stared at the shadow. Shadow was silent for a moment after hearing Jing Yu's words. She then picked up her chopsticks and began to eat. This was probably the first time he had experienced the feeling of eating with his employer. This kind of feeling was very strange, and it made the shadow's heart tremble slightly. He thought back to the time when he was with Nailan Yu. They were both women, but why was there such a big difference? The merciless insults and unrestrained beating caused the shadow's expression to change in an instant. Everything that Nailan Yu had done to him in the past seemed to become clear at this moment. The master that he had treated wholeheartedly had never treated him as a person. "Shadow? What's wrong with you?" Jing Yu looked at the shadow, who was in a daze. She blinked her eyes and asked curiously. "Nothing." The shadow lowered his head and quickly ate a few mouthfuls of rice before saying, "I'm full. There are only 3 days left until the wedding. Lady Yu, please make your preparations." After saying this, the shadow hurriedly left. Jing Yu looked at the shadow's back as it left and frowned. Why was this person so nervous? Chapter 1418. Could it be that the way she ate scared them again? As Jing Yu thought about it, she suddenly patted her head in annoyance. Looking at the table full of delicious dishes, she thought for a while and silently began to eat again. "Let's eat until I'm full first." In 3 days she would be able to meet Xiao Chen. Jing Yu's heart was filled with excitement, but the situation outside seemed to be getting more and more unstable. Jing Yu's eyes moved slightly, as if she had thought of something. She changed her clothes, put on her makeup, and went out. Walking on the street, she could clearly feel the heavy atmosphere in the air. Jing Yu walked extremely slowly. Her eyes were covered with a black cloth, and her clothes were very shabby. The people on the street who saw Jing Yu habitually avoided her. Jing Yu moved slowly. Her ears twitched slightly as she listened to the voices around her. People's hearts, People's hearts. Miss, the word you wrote is your heart. A voice entered Jing Yu's ears, causing Jing Yu to stop in her tracks. Taoist priest, what do you mean? A lady's voice rang out. Jing Yu knew that there was a fortune teller reading her fortune, but she didn't know what was going on. Jing Yu stood in the same spot and continued to listen. If your heart is not set, how can you accomplish anything? I think the fate you want to read all depends on your thoughts. The Taoist priest's voice rang out again. He slowly opened his mouth and said, People's hearts are better than all things. People's hearts are the foundation of human beings. Who said that fate is irreversible? So, it's very likely that I don't want to marry someone else? The lady's voice rang out again. That depends on whether your heart is firm or not. The Taoist priest's voice rang out again. If it depends on myself, why would I come to you for a fortune-telling? Could it be that I casually spouted a few words to fabricate something? The lady seemed to be angered by the Taoist priest, and her eyes were filled with anger. You little liar! There was chaos in her ears. Jing Yu stood in the same spot, and her thoughts drifted a little. She frowned slightly. She vaguely heard the Taoist priest's cries for help, shouting something about a refund. Jing Yu couldn't help but laugh. What a liar! Jing Yu walked forward slowly, but in her heart, she thought about the Taoist priest's words. Although they were simple and vague, Jing Yu heard it had a very different feeling in her heart. People's hearts are better than all things. Who said that fate is irreversible? Jing Yu stopped in her tracks once again, and her heart beat faster and faster. It was as if something that she couldn't understand was slowly coming to light, but she still felt that something was missing. Jing Yu couldn't figure it out no matter how hard she thought about it. She immediately turned around to ask the Taoist priest, but when Jing Yu walked back to her original spot, she was told that the Taoist priest was a liar and had been chased away. Jing Yu couldn't help but shake her head and smile bitterly. She was really at her wit's end. How could she believe the words of a liar? With that thought, Jing Yu turned around and walked away. She walked on the streets for a long time, but she didn't hear anything useful. Just like that, she walked back to the house. The wedding day arrived as scheduled, and the entire imperial city fell into a very strange atmosphere. In the imperial city, it was a joyous occasion for the 9th emperors to get married, but no one on the streets could laugh. Chapter 1419. Today, the 9th emperor is getting married. Everyone is invited to drink to their heart's content inside the estate. The steward of the estate shouted from outside. The crowd didn't have much to smile at first, but after hearing the announcement, some of them went inside. They'd never been inside the estate before, let alone have free drinks and drinks. Jing Yu stood in the crowd and watched the people go in. Her lips curled up before she turned and left. How is it? Is everyone who should be here? Madame Nye, who was wearing a luxurious outfit and exquisite makeup, asked the guard next to her inside the prince's estate. Yes, the Holy Family and Poison Sex people will be here soon, the guard hastily replied. Very good. A bloodthirsty smile appeared on Madame Nye's lips, and the viciousness on her lips made the guard tremble violently. As expected, when the guard retreated, he really did hear the sound of an announcement. The Holy Family's third elder, Ji, led the Holy Family's people to congratulate them. The Poison Sex third young master, Yun Jing, led the Poison Sex people to present their gifts. Now that everyone who should be here was here, the show was about to begin. In the imperial palace, the emperor suddenly fell seriously ill and the court was in chaos. Meanwhile, the sound of ceremonial music started playing at the estate. The wedding really was about to begin. Behind this wedding, a group of people headed for the imperial palace. No one seemed to have expected Madame Nye to use this wedding to create momentum and bring all her people into the imperial city. She was ready to take over the Tokyo imperial city completely. When the 9th emperors appeared in front of the crowd in pitch-black robes, the crowd jumped in fright. Wasn't a wedding supposed to be a joyous occasion? Why was the groom dressed in black? Everyone's expressions turned a bit strange. Those who thought the 9th emperors didn't marry willingly were even more convinced now. Back then, The news of the ninth emperors and the imperial concubine with different pupils had spread like wildfire. Everyone knew that the ninth emperor was willing to give up the country for the imperial concubine with different pupils. Now, he actually went to marry someone else? It was obvious that he had been forced to do so. When Madame Nye saw Xiao Chen walk out in black, her expression turned ugly. Xiao Chen was indeed unwilling to get married. It was already difficult for Madame Nye to make Xiao Chen get married. As for Xiao Chen's unwillingness to change into the groom's clothes, Madame Nye truly didn't have the energy to control Xiao Chen anymore, so she could only let him be. Third elder, I heard that the woman with abnormal pupils has already been incinerated? Madame Nye asked Jie with narrowed eyes. That's right. The other pupil no longer exists, so Madame Nye can rest assured. When Jie heard Madame Nye's words, she licked her lips in delight and said, Miss Naylan was also present when the other pupil was incinerated. Madame Nye, you probably already asked about it, right? Ha! Madame Nye laughed heartily. I'm just a bit worried. This woman with abnormal pupils died too easily. It makes me feel a bit uneasy. Madame Nye, don't worry. It is absolutely impossible for anyone to escape from my sacred race's great sacrificial altar. Moreover, this woman's corpse was personally taken care of by this old man. As Jie spoke, there seemed to be some joy in his eyes. Chapter 1420. With third elder's words, this madam feels a lot more at ease, huh? Madame Nye immediately nodded, her eyes filled with satisfaction. She slowly licked her lips, then turned her head and didn't say anything else. Xiao Chen, Naylan Yu, and the others finally appeared. This wedding ceremony was truly incomparably simple. Because Xiao Chen's face was stiff from beginning to end and he wasn't willing to do it, they directly skipped over it. When the audience saw this scene, they all couldn't help but laugh. Originally, this would have taken a long time, but because of this, a lot of it was saved. Then they directly came here to get married. Madame Nye looked at the two people approaching and slowly sat up straight with a faint smile on her lips. Madame Nye was Xiao Chen's older sister, so she naturally sat at the head of the table. As for Yunjing, he could be considered Naylan Yu's older brother, so he sat on the other side. Xiao Chen looked at the two people sitting at the head of the table and slightly furrowed his brows. There wasn't the slightest bit of expression on his cold face. There was a hint of amusement in the eyes of the crowd. This wedding was really fun. Madame Nye looked at Xiao Chen's appearance and the expression on her face changed slightly. Then she slowly smiled and said, Since we're getting married, let's skip this cumbersome ceremony. That skipped? The master of ceremonies was completely confused. After being a master of ceremonies for so long, this was his first time encountering such a nondescript wedding ceremony. People of the martial world don't have so many rules. Madame Nye looked at the master of ceremonies and faintly smiled, her eyes filled with a dangerous light. The master of ceremonies looked at Madame Nye and silently gulped. Just as he braced himself and was about to speak, he suddenly heard a laugh. When did the 9 emperors become people of the martial world? The extremely clear shout attracted everyone's attention. Everyone turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. The gate of the mansion opened wide, and the sound of footsteps could be heard in front of the gate. Under everyone's gaze, a figure appeared in front of everyone with steady steps. His black clothes were so breathtaking. A black veil covered the person's face. The tall and slender figure walked forward and stood in front of everyone. The black veil fluttered in the wind. It was as if time had stopped at this moment. Who is pretending to be mysterious? Who dares to ruin the 9 emperors' wedding? When Madame Nye saw the person who appeared, her expression suddenly turned cold, and she shouted. How laughable! Jing Yu didn't hide her figure at all. She didn't hide her appearance, nor did she hide her voice. The moment Jing Yu spoke, Naylan Yu suddenly lifted the embroidered handkerchief that covered her head. She looked at Jing Yu, who was standing in place, with a face full of shock. The 9th imperial concubine is still alive. What right does the 9 emperors have to take a wife? Jing Yu's eyes were filled with ice. When she said this, everyone's eyes were filled with fear. Everyone's faces were filled with terror. Someone actually dared to mention the 9th imperial concubine so openly. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Yun Jing, who was sitting on the side, suddenly stood up and attacked Jing Yu's face with the dagger in his hand. Jing Yu didn't even blink as she watched the dagger slide past her face and lift the hat on her head. Chapter 1421. Jing Yu's beautiful face was revealed in front of everyone. Her golden-green eyes were dazzling. In that instant, everyone looked at Jing Yu in a different light. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Different pupils? It's the Empress with different pupils? One of the voices sounded out. Everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment. The way they looked at Jing Yu also changed. Jing Yu, it's you. Nailin Yu never thought that the Jing Yu that she saw die with her own eyes would appear here. It's me. Jing Yu didn't have any doubts about her appearance. She slowly curled her lips and said, "What's wrong? Are you surprised to see me here?" Jing Yu's black eyes smiled as she looked at Nailin Yu. "I have to thank you for this." The corners of Jing Yu's mouth slowly curled up. As soon as Jing Yu finished speaking, the sound of something tearing through the air resounded from the sky. A strange figure appeared by Jing Yu's side under everyone's gazes. The figure was dressed in black and held a long sword in his hand. The hideous wound on his face was somewhat frightening. The person who appeared was naturally the shadow. Shadow? When Nailin Yu saw the shadow appear, her eyes suddenly widened. Then, as if she thought of something, her heart fiercely jumped. She glared at the shadow with a venomous expression and shouted, "It was you who saved this bitch. Did you forget? Who is your master?" Nailin Yu looked at the shadow with a vicious expression. The gaze that she used to look at the shadow was filled with cruelty. It didn't even seem like she was looking at a person. "You have already abandoned him. Nailin Yu, what right do you have to criticize the shadow?" Jing Yu looked at Nailin Yu's appearance and her eyes were filled with ridicule. She looked at Nailin Yu with incomparable viciousness and said, "It was you who personally abandoned a person who was willing to die for you. Nailin Yu, I really pity you." Jing Yu's mocking gaze caused Nailin Yu's expression to change again and again. "I really feel bad for the shadow. Why would he risk his life for a piece of trash like you?" Jing Yu laughed loudly and said, "How do you feel now? The person who was so obedient to you back then is now saving your enemy with his own hands. Doesn't it feel good to see this?" "Jing Yu, I'm going to kill you." Nailin Yu's heart fiercely rose and fell because of Jing Yu's words. Enough. At this moment, Madame Nye, who was sitting on the stage, with her eyes and looked at Jing Yu. She stared at Jing Yu and said, "Little girl, do you really think you're invincible under the heavens? How dare you barge into my territory alone?" Madame Nye said as she stared at Jing Yu with her pitch-black eyes. Your territory?" Jing Yu looked at Madame Nye like she was looking at an idiot. Her lips curled into a mocking smile as she said, "This is the Tokyo, this is the Wang estate, and I'm Xiao Chen's official wife, the 9th imperial concubine. I'm the mistress of this estate. Who do you think you are? You think you're worthy of being Xiao Chen's older sister? You think you're worthy of calling this your territory?" Jing Yu's words were incomparably vicious. When Madame Nye heard Jing Yu's words, her expression quickly changed and her hands that were hanging by her sides fiercely clenched. Chapter 1422. You're truly sharp-tongued. I'd like to see how you're going to seize this territory by yourself. Madame Nye took a deep breath and looked at Jing Yu. Besides, your husband is in my hands right now. Is that so? The corners of Jing Yu's lips slowly turned up, and her smile was so wide that for some reason, Madame Nye suddenly felt her hair stand on end when she saw Jing Yu's smile. An indescribable sense of lingering fear rose in Madame Nye's heart. Before Madame Nye could react, a soft sound suddenly rang out. Pissed. It was the sound of a sharp sword piercing flesh. "Nye Jingtong, this is something I've wanted to do since 10 years ago." An extremely cold voice rang out next to Madame Nye's ears. Madame Nye slowly looked down, and her eyes widened bit by bit as she stared at the short sword that pierced her abdomen. Dark red blood flowed out bit by bit from Madame Nie's abdomen, and her eyes were filled with disbelief and terror. She slowly turned her head and looked behind her with difficulty. Behind Madame Nie, Xiao Chen slowly released his grip on the sword and watched Madame Nie collapse at his feet. How did you? Madame Nie's eyes were filled with terror and disbelief as she looked at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen looked at Madame Nie indifferently and said aloofly, delusional of trying to control me. Nie Jingtong, you really didn't take a single word mother said back then to heart. So you planned all of this? Madame Nie trembled all over, and the terror in her eyes was obvious. Yes. Xiao Chen stood in front of Madame Nie with his hands behind his back and said coldly, when you killed my mother back then, I said, if you dared to take half a step into the Central Plains, this king would personally take your life. Madame Nie's lips curled into a smile when she heard Xiao Chen's words. An incomparably cold glint appeared in her eyes, but it also seemed to contain a strong sense of unwillingness. Madame Nie's body collapsed bit by bit. Imperial concubine. At this moment, a surprised voice sounded. Yin Xiao. Jing Yu smiled faintly when she saw Yin Xiao running over. When Madame Nie saw this, her eyes abruptly widened as though she realized what went wrong. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness and anger, but she seemed to have finally understood something and smiled as though a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Under the gaze of Xiao Chen and the crowd, he slowly closed his eyes. This change came too suddenly. Everyone was stunned. After Jing Yu comforted Yin Xiao, she walked toward Nailin Yu step by step. Nailin Yu trembled as she looked at Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. Her eyes were filled with panic as she shouted, guards! Someone come! Take these two people down! Nailin Yu, are you calling them? Jing Yu suddenly laughed. After Jing Yu said that, Xing Yi appeared in front of everyone, dragging a corpse with each hand. He casually threw the corpse in front of everyone. How could this be? Nailin Yu's eyes were filled with fear. Chapter 1423. Take everyone down for this king. Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with malice. As soon as Xiao Chen's shout fell, countless guards rushed in from all directions. The gleaming swords in their hands were placed against the necks of Yunjing, Jie, and the others. This caused the people who were just about to make a move to freeze once again. Nailin Yu, are you satisfied with the current situation? Jing Yu walked step by step towards Nailin Yu. Nailin Yu's body stiffened as she stood in place, her eyes filled with terror as she watched Jing Yu get closer. Don't worry, I won't kill you so easily. Jing Yu moved closer to Nailin Yu and looked at Nailin Yu's beautiful appearance. Her eyes held a faint smile as she said, everything you did to me in the past, I will take it back 1,000 times, 10,000 times over. Everything you did to Xiao Chen, your poison sect will pay for it. Jing Yu's face was filled with killing intent as she viciously kicked Nailin Yu to the ground. Nailin Yu fell to the ground and slowly turned her head to look at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen expressionlessly walked over and stared at Nailin Yu. His serious eyes caused Nailin Yu's heart to tremble. What's with that look? After Xiao Chen looked at her for a while, he suddenly raised his hand and pulled out a long sword. Before anyone could see what was going on, they heard Nailin Yu's blood-curdling scream. Ah! Hearing this blood-curdling scream, everyone instantly trembled violently. They saw with their own eyes that Nailin Yu, who was lying on the ground, had her slender hands cut off by Xiao Chen so quickly and neatly. Bright red blood dyed the floor red. Nailin Yu curled up on the ground in an instant, her entire body trembling. Her forehead was covered in a frightening amount of sweat. At this moment, everyone held their breaths as they watched Xiao Chen expressionlessly withdraw his sword. Their eyes were filled with fear. This king said that you are disgusting. Xiao Chen stared at Nailin Yu as he coldly spat out these words. When Jing Yu saw Xiao Chen's actions, her face twitched slightly. She silently swallowed her saliva and didn't say anything as she watched these people slowly turn their heads. Lock them all up in the dungeon. After Xiao Chen spat out these words, he walked in front of Jing Yu. His pitch-black eyes stared closely at Jing Yu. Jing Yu also stared back at Xiao Chen. Neither of them said anything. There is a battle in the palace. Let's go. After the two of them stared at each other for a long time, Xiao Chen suddenly opened his mouth and shouted. Everyone bowed in response. When Jingyu walked out of the palace, she realized that this was Xiao Chen's plan. Outside the palace, Jingyu saw tens of thousands of soldiers and horses gathered. The person leading the troops was a familiar person, General Pang Yuan. When Jingyu and Xiao Chen were forced out of the palace, it was this general who surrounded the palace. Who would have thought that there would be a day when they would fight side by side? Jingyu stood in front of the palace. When she mounted her horse, Xiao Chen turned his head to look at her. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Without saying a word, they rushed into the palace. This Tokyo palace was the place that Jingyu was most unwilling to go to. The palace doors were wide open. Everyone on the streets of the palace was in chaos. Today was destined to be a chaotic day. Chapter 1424. There was a massacre in the palace. After so many years, Jingyu finally saw Ning Xiangyuan again. Above the highest position was the position of Empress. Ning Xiangyuan had exquisite makeup on her face. She wore a dazzling phoenix robe and a phoenix crown. She sat alone on the high seat and quietly watched Xiao Chen and Jingyu walk in. There was a faint smile on her face. "You're here." When Ning Xiangyuan saw Xiao Chen and Jingyu, the smile on her face widened. She spoke as if they were good friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. Jingyu stood below while Xiao Chen stood beside Jingyu. Neither of them spoke. There was a commotion behind them. Jingyu tilted her head slightly and saw Lu Miaoqiu and Xiao Yuling walking in with knives in their hands. Ninth Emperors. When Xiao Yuling saw Xiao Chen, her eyes lit up and she nodded slightly. Lu Miaoqiu quickly walked to Jingyu's side and looked at Jingyu worriedly. "Yeah, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Jingyu smiled and shook her head when she saw Lu Miaoqiu's anxious expression. "That's good." Lu Miaoqiu heaved a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to speak, she heard Ning Xiangyuan, who was sitting on the high seat, chuckling softly. Within that laughter, there was an indescribable feeling. "Haha." Ning Xiangyuan laughed loudly. She looked at Xiao Yuling and Lu Miaoqiu and said slowly, "So, all of this was controlled by the two of you. So what if it was?" Lu Miaoqiu turned around and looked coldly at Ning Xiangyuan. "Crown Prince Consort, you are truly scheming. You deceived me and everyone else." Ning Xiangyuan's lips curled up as she looked at Lu Miaoqiu and said, "I wonder if you managed to fool the 9th imperial concubine as well." "Ning Xiangyuan, you don't have to say such disgusting words. Do you think I will be like you, trying my best to scheme against my good sister?" Lu Miaoqiu sneered. Her words were filled with disdain, causing Ning Xiangyuan's face to stiffen. "Ah." Ning Xiangyuan laughed out loud when she heard Lu Miaoqiu's words. Her eyes slowly landed on Jingyu. Jingyu also stood there and looked at Ning Xiangyuan. In this palace, neither of them spoke. Jingyu looked at Ning Xiangyuan for a long time. Suddenly, she looked at Ning Xiangyuan and asked, "Ning Xiangyuan, have you ever regretted it?" Jingyu's words were so calm, without a trace of other emotions. "Regret? Huh. Is it still important whether I regret it or not?" Ning Xiangyuan's body trembled slightly. She seemed to be tired from laughing. Jingyu could clearly hear the sadness in Ning Xiangyuan's words. "I regret it very much." Everyone looked at Ning Xiangyuan silently. Ning Xiangyuan slowly restrained her expression and said, "I regret getting to know you in the first place." "I regret it. Why did I get to know you? Why did I get to know you? Why did I get such a sincere friend? Why did I end up like this because of a man? Because of my selfishness? Because of jealousy? I personally tore apart the relationship that I treasured so much." Ning Xiangyuan's voice trembled slightly. She stared at Jingyu and said, "Jingyu, do you know that I'm the one who saved you? I used to have two very good friends." Chapter 1425. What? Why did I become the heartless executioner who planned all of this? Ning Xiangyuan stared at Jingyu and said, "Jingyu, do you know how much I regret it?" Only now do I know. I don't love the 9 emperors at all. Ning Xiangyuan looked at Xiao Qin and said calmly, "Do you know how much I envy you? How much I envy you?" Ah. Ning Xiangyuan smiled faintly and stood up. Her phoenix robe was so dazzling. She looked down at Jingyu and said, "I originally thought that I would be able to be happy after sitting in this supreme position. But when I really sat on this seat, I could no longer reveal a simple smile. In my eyes, everyone's words carried ulterior motives." Ning Xiangyuan walked down step by step. "Now I understand. From the moment I stepped into the palace, my fate was destined to end. But Jingyu, do you know?" Ning Xiangyuan stood in front of Jingyu and stared at Jingyu and said, "Now, I miss the past so much. There was you, there was me, there was her." Ning Xiangyuan looked at Jingyu and the corners of her mouth curled up. The light in her eyes made it seem as if she saw the past. She said slowly, "Back then, you weren't the empress with different pupils. Back then, I wasn't the Tokyo empress. Back then, she wasn't a female general who commanded thousands of soldiers. Back then, we were sisters that many people envied." Ning Xiangyuan's eyes were filled with tears. She stared at Jingyu and said, "We protected you, and you protected us. It was as if we could be together forever. But why did it become like this?" Ning Xiangyuan's lips trembled as she looked at Jingyu. When Jingyu heard Ning Xiangyuan's words, her heart trembled violently, but she couldn't say a word. Her expression changed unpredictably. Jingyu saw Ning Xiangyuan's face turn pale bit by bit. Blood seeped out of her trembling lips. "Jingyu." Ning Xiangyuan gripped her hand tightly as if she was making a final struggle. "So many years have passed, but there's something I haven't been able to say to you." Ning Xiangyuan stared at Jingyu as more and more blood seeped out of her lips. "Ning Xiangyuan." Jingyu was shocked to see Ning Xiangyuan like this. Her eyes widened slightly as she stared at Ning Xiangyuan. "I'm sorry." Ning Xiangyuan slowly spat out these 3 words as she looked at Jingyu. It was as though Ning Xiangyuan had used up all her strength to spit out those clear words. Ning Xiangyuan, who was dressed in a phoenix robe, collapsed in front of everyone. "Jingyu, I'm sorry." These were Ning Xiangyuan's last words. This luxuriously dressed woman had taken her own life by consuming poison. In the Empress's palace, there was a faint smile on her face before she died. It was as if she had been relieved of a heavy burden because she had said these words. That pair of eyes slowly closed, and the tears in her eyes flowed down. Hidden in those tears was the regret of her life. In the end, she still died. She died in front of Jingyu. She died so easily, but it seemed to weigh heavily on Jingyu's heart. Chapter 1426. The Tokyo Palace changed drastically. The Empress took poison and committed suicide. The Emperor was paralyzed and never woke up. Crown Prince Xiao Yuling answered the call of the officials to succeed the throne. Crown Princess Lu was conferred the title of Empress. No one had expected the Tokyo Palace to change so drastically. After that day, it rained for a long time on this side of the Tokyo Palace. The heavy rain washed the streets, washed the palace, and seemed to wash away the atmosphere. But it was different. Xiao Qin. Everything in the palace seemed to be the same as before. Jingyu stood at the side of the corridor and looked at the drizzle outside. Her eyes were a little dazed as she turned to look at Xiao Qin. "Yes." Xiao Qin replied slowly. "When did you regain your memory?" Jingyu looked at Xiao Qin with a burning gaze as she asked. When Xiao Qin heard Jingyu's question, his expression changed slightly. He turned to look at Jingyu and said, "It was around when I lost my memory and when I fell in love with you for the second time." Jingyu heard Xiao Qin's answer and her eyes were filled with surprise. "In this world, you are probably the only one who can attract my attention." Xiao Qin turned around and gently caressed Jingyu's face. His eyes were shining as he said, "In this world, you are probably the only one who can work so hard to love me." "Jingyu, how could I dare to forget you?" Xiao Qin looked deeply at Jingyu as he spoke. Jingyu heard Xiao Qin's words and felt a sharp pain in her heart. The pain made Jingyu's eyes water. She looked at Xiao Chen and Xiao Chen's eyes and seemed to see the memories of the Holy Family. The person she tried so hard to love. So, at that time, he had already fallen in love with her again? Jingyu lowered her head and smiled faintly. Speaking of which, I have to thank the Holy Family. If it weren't for the incineration, I wouldn't have remembered everything. Xiao Chen looked quietly at Jingyu and said, Ta. Jingyu smiled and looked up at Xiao Chen. She said, I was just thinking that it was time to thank the Holy Family. What do you think? Of course. Xiao Chen agreed. Yun. Holy Family. Pong. At this moment, his face suddenly turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood on the altar. High Priest. When the disciples saw Qin Bai vomiting blood, they were shocked. But why did this happen? Qin Bai's eyes were full of panic. His eyes were bloodshot and his heart was shaking. The elders and holy leader Yun Weijun quickly walked up to the altar. It was going to be smooth sailing. But why did this happen? Qin Bai took the astrolabe in a panic. His fingers trembled as he turned it. But as Qin Bai turned it, his face became even paler. But why did this happen? But why did the Holy Family end? What happened? Didn't the abnormal pupil die? Why is it still like this? Qin Bai's words came out slowly. Chapter 1427. No one could hear him clearly. Qin Bai's hand suddenly stopped and he turned around to look at Yun Weijun and the elders. He seemed to have thought of something and he suddenly burst out laughing. Ha! I understand. Ha! His laughter was so terrifying that it shocked Yun Weijun and the others. Yun Weijun, the destruction of the Holy Family was because of you. It was you. So it was you. Pooh. After Qin Bai finished speaking, he spat out another mouthful of blood. His body stiffened and he fell to the ground. He slowly closed his eyes and no longer made a sound. Yun Weijun was shocked by Qin Bai's words. She did not know what was going on for a long time. Jingyu didn't know anything about what happened in the Holy Family. However, Jingyu knew about what happened in the Tokyo Imperial City. The first thing Xiao Yuling did after inheriting the throne was to eradicate the rebels. Xiao Yuling had already engraved those people in her heart. For so many years, Xiao Yuling had always been hiding in the shadows. She had seen everything clearly. She could clearly see everyone and everything that had happened. Tokyo really had a big change of blood, but the price was heavy. Xiao Chen didn't care about anything until the storm calmed down a little. He entered the imperial palace. It was said that Xiao Chen and Xiao Yuling talked for a long time in the study. However, no one knew what they were talking about. Jingyu strolled around the mansion, looking a little absent-minded. Why did she have such a strange feeling? It was so strange that Jingyu felt a little scared. Things have changed with the passage of time. That's about it. Xing Yi, are you saying that those soldiers were the last thing Xiao Yi left for Xiao Chen? In the pavilion in the prince's residence, Jingyu raised her hand slightly to adjust her cloak, then turned to look at Interrogation Officer 1 and asked. Yes. Xing Yi nodded slowly and said, when Master went to the palace to ask for a decree, he received this army. Xing Yi's words made Jingyu fall into deep thought. Only now did she know that Xiao Yi had already noticed something. By the time Xiao Yi realized something was wrong, it was already too late. This last commander's seal should be all that the Tokyo had, right? Jingyu slowly lowered her head. His memory of Xiao Yi was a little blurry. The high and mighty emperor from back then had ended up in such a state. It was extremely ironic. Madam, we just received news that the crown prince of the Cebu kingdom is dead. Xing Yi paused for a moment and thought for a moment before speaking slowly. Oh, in the end he still died. Jingyu didn't seem to feel anything when she heard the news. She slowly closed her eyes and said, now, only Nanli is left, right? Jingyu's question was baffling. However, Interrogation Officer 1 understood what he meant. It was about time for Nanli to be destroyed. The Chow Chow that had obstructed their path was easily removed with a few words. It was so calm. When Xiao Chen returned, he saw this scene. A woman in a snow-white cloak was standing in the pavilion, quietly looking into the distance. It was as if she was thinking about something, or as if she was reminiscing about something. Her serious expression made it difficult for anyone to disturb her. When Xing Yi saw Xiao Chen, he lowered his head slightly and quietly retreated. Chapter 1428. Xiao Chen took light steps and stood behind Jingyu. He didn't do anything and just stood there quietly. However, the corners of Jingyu's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Why are you hiding behind me?" Jingyu asked with a faint smile. "To hug you," Xiao Chen replied quietly and reached out to pull Jingyu into his arms. Jingyu's heart trembled slightly and her body gradually relaxed. She leaned against Xiao Chen and slowly closed her eyes. The clamor around her seemed to have faded away. In this prince's mansion, she had left and returned. In the end, she had won. "Xiao Chen." Jingyu called out Xiao Chen's name again. Xiao Chen gently rubbed the top of Jingyu's head and responded. "I suddenly remembered." Jingyu frowned and her face suddenly became angry. She broke free from Xiao Chen's hand and turned to stand in front of Xiao Chen. She looked at Xiao Chen with an ugly expression. "What's wrong?" Xiao Chen asked with a frown. He didn't know why, but when he saw Jingyu's expression, Xiao Chen suddenly had a bad premonition. "When we were in the Holy Family, you actually forgot about me. You even said so many cruel things. I even chased after you." Jingyu gritted her teeth and looked at Xiao Chen. She said, "When I was with you, why didn't you chase after me?" Jingyu's pair of golden-green eyes stared at Xiao Chen. When Xiao Chen heard Jingyu's words, he knew that something big was going to happen. The corner of his mouth twitched and he silently lowered his head. Just as he was thinking about how to answer, Jingyu actually turned and left. Xiao Chen raised his voice and called out, "Don't call me. From now on, you should properly study how to chase after girls. I'm going to look for Miaoqiu," Jingyu said without turning her head and swaggered into the palace. Xiao Chen stood there dumbfounded. "Master?" Interrogation Officer 1 looked at Jingyu who had gone far away, then looked at Xiao Chen who was still standing in the same place, and called out carefully, "Xing Yi, do you know how to chase after girls?" Xiao Chen was silent for a long time and then asked this question very seriously. Xing Yi laughed rather unloyally. He silently swallowed his saliva and said, "This subordinate doesn't know." "That's true. How would you know?" Xiao Chen looked coldly at Xing Yi and said, "If you knew, why would you be forced here by a girl?" After Xing Yi heard Xiao Chen's words, the corner of his mouth twitched violently. He really wanted to slap himself. Why was he laughing for no reason? Yes, this subordinate has only been chased by others. I've never chased anyone before. Xing Yi silently replied. He straightened his body and said, "Master, take your time to think about it. This subordinate will go and gather information first." Xing Yi cleanly said this sentence and turned to leave. Xiao Chen stood there with a dark expression. Since when did his subordinates become like this? How big of a shadow was Xiao Chen's heart? Jingyu swaggered into the palace and didn't give Xiao Yuling a chance to react. Not only did she enter the palace, she even dared to sleep in the same room as Lu Miaoqiu. She didn't even want to sleep in other rooms. In Jingyu's words, what if Xiao Chen entered her room in the middle of the night? Obviously, Xiao Chen silently gave up on this idea when he heard this news. Jingyu really understood Xiao Chen very well. Chapter 1429. Jingyu was able to live comfortably, but Xiao Yuling was clearly unhappy. "Ayaya, the imperial palace is still the best. It's so big." Jingyu sighed as she ate the desserts and looked out the window. "If you like it, then you can stay in the imperial palace." Lu Miaoqiu sat to the side and poured tea for Jingyu. When she heard that Jingyu had stopped talking, she smiled faintly. Jingyu turned her head, but before she could say anything, she heard a powerful voice. "No way." This "no way" was said with great vigor. Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu both looked over. At the door, Xiao Yuling was wearing a dragon robe. From the looks of it, She had just returned from court. She hadn't even changed her clothes and appeared in front of Jingyu and Lu Miaoqiu. Why not? Jingyu looked Xiao Yuling up and down. The contrast was too great. The first time she saw Xiao Yuling, she was simply a sickly person. Now, she was filled with energy and acted like she was the boss. Tsk. Seriously, she had fooled everyone. We are the emperor. If we say no, it means no. Xiao Yuling said seriously. Her words were really intimidating. Even Jingyu was scared silly by her words. If I say no, it means no. Lu Miaoqiu looked at Xiao Yuling and frowned unhappily. Jingyu barely escaped death. Why can't she stay in the imperial palace for a few more days? If your majesty doesn't allow it, then I will move out of the palace with Ye. Lu Miaoqiu said calmly. When Xiao Yuling heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, her face darkened and her expression became even uglier. What we mean is... Xiao Yuling sighed deeply and said, it's not appropriate for the 9th imperial concubine to stay here with the empress. Why don't we arrange a suitable residence for the 9th imperial concubines? How is it not appropriate? Lu Miaoqiu was even more unhappy when she heard Xiao Yuling's words. Ye is my good sister. We haven't seen each other in a long time. How is it not appropriate for her to stay with me? Xiao Yuling, you're here to cause trouble, right? Lu Miaoqiu looked very angry. She glared at Xiao Yuling and said, if you don't want to see me, then I'll leave. Miaoqiu. When Xiao Yuling heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, she sighed deeply and said, it's my fault. You can do whatever you want. I still have some documents to review. I'll leave first. Then Xiao Yuling left. The entire time, Jingyu watched the two of them while eating melon seeds. Oh my god. The way the two of them interacted with each other was too interesting. Jingyu inexplicably felt that the reason Xiao Yuling specially wore this set of clothes was actually to boost her courage, right? Miaoqiu, when did you get so close to Xiao Yuling? Hurry up and tell me what happened. Jingyu's gossipy nature began to stir. She looked curiously at Lu Miaoqiu and said, even Xiao Yuling could be so subdued by you. How interesting. When Lu Miaoqiu heard Jingyu's words, her face instantly turned red. She glared at Jingyu and said coquettishly, I don't know what happened either. How did I end up like this? Chapter 1430. Jingyu blinked when she heard Lu Miaoqiu's words. When he was the crown prince, I didn't feel anything. I thought it would be nice to share a husband with someone else. But now, I'm jealous. Lu Miaoqiu slowly lowered her head and said, now that he is the emperor, he can't only have one empress. In the future, there will be countless concubines in the harem. Yeah, I don't think I can stand it. Lu Miaoqiu's eyes were filled with bitterness. She looked at Jingyu and said, I want to leave before I fall too deep. Jingyu looked at Lu Miaoqiu's expression and her heart trembled. What she was worried about had happened. Miaoqiu, have you thought it through? Jingyu looked at Lu Miaoqiu helplessly and said, I think Xiao Yuling treats you well. She gave you the position of empress. If this happened to anyone else, it would be a great favor. Forget it. Lu Miaoqiu slowly lowered her head and said, when I took this position, I wanted to help you. Now, it seems that I have done everything I can. The position of empress, to me, is not tempting at all. Jingyu looked at Lu Miaoqiu's indifferent expression and suddenly felt that she didn't understand. But at the same time, he also felt deeply moved that was indescribable. I understand. Jingyu looked at Lu Miaoqiu and said, in 10 days, Xiao Chen will lead the army to Nanli. This may be an opportunity. Miaoqiu, think about it carefully. You have done enough for me. Now think about yourself. Lu Miaoqiu slowly lowered her head. She was struggling in her heart. Should she leave or not? Jingyu didn't interrupt. She had said what she wanted to say. Lu Miaoqiu understood that it was futile for Jingyu to say more. Now, it was time to see what Xiao Yuling was like. Jingyu stayed in the palace for a long time. Xiao Chen was about to go crazy in the prince's residence. The two of them had been separated for so long and so many twists and turns. Originally, he wanted to have a good time with her after everything was over. But before he could even kiss her, his wife had run away. The Empress is still in the palace. The coldness on Xiao Chen's face was getting deeper and deeper by the day. Interrogation Officer 1 had been secretly amused every day when he saw Xiao Chen like this. Now that he heard Xiao Chen's question, he answered very calmly, yes. Go. To the palace. Xiao Chen couldn't sit still anymore. Just as he stood up and was about to leave, he saw a guard run in. Imperial Uncle, His Majesty is here. The guard seemed to be very conflicted as he quietly spat out these words. His Majesty? What is His Majesty doing here? Xiao Chen was slightly taken aback. He looked at the guard who came to report and asked curiously. This subordinate doesn't know. The guard replied. Xiao Chen frowned and walked into the hall. When he reached the hall, he saw Xiao Yuling wearing casual clothes and sitting on the high seat with a gloomy face. Greetings, Your Majesty. Xiao Chen looked at Xiao Yuling's appearance and his eyes were filled with confusion. He then bowed slightly and greeted. Ninth Emperors, you're finally here. When Xiao Yuling saw Xiao Chen, it was as if she saw her savior. She said with a face that was about to cry, Imperial Uncle, quickly go and bring Imperial Aunt back. I will personally prepare a palanquin with 8 carriers. Chapter 1431. When Xiao Chen saw Xiao Yuling's expression, the corners of his mouth twitched. What's wrong? Don't ask anything. Imperial Uncle will go and pick her up. Xiao Yuling looked as though she didn't want to talk about it. Xing Yi watched from the side and quietly walked over to Xiao Chen and whispered into his ear, Madam lives with the Empress. His Majesty has already been chased out for a long time. When Xing Yi said this, the teasing tone in his voice made Xiao Chen's lips curl up. Fortunately, he wasn't the only one suffering. Xiao Chen looked at Xiao Yuling with a slight smile and said calmly, Then I'll have to trouble Your Majesty to make the preparations. You will have to pick up this woman yourself. The two of them glanced at each other, as if they were in the same boat. In the Imperial Palace, Jing Yu and Lu Miaoqiu were sitting under a tree and drinking tea under the warm sun. When they heard the sound of movement, they turned their heads and saw 2 people striding over. One was wearing a yellow robe and the other was wearing a black robe. Jing Yu and Lu Miaoqiu were stunned by the 2 people walking over with gloomy expressions. Why are the 2 of them here together? Jing Yu's eyes were filled with confusion as she blinked and asked. I don't know. Lu Miaoqiu was also confused as she looked at the 2 men standing in front of them. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Xiao Chen pull Jing Yu up and put her over his shoulder. Ah! Jing Yu immediately screamed in panic. Miaoqiu! Yeah. On the other side, Xiao Yuling also lifted Lu Miaoqiu up. The 2 men looked at each other and walked off in different directions. Jing Yu and Lu Miaoqiu were madly calling each other's names. However, the 2 stinky men had no intention of paying attention to them. Jing Yu watched as Lu Miaoqiu was dragged into the room and Lu Miaoqiu watched as Jing Yu was taken away by Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen, how can you chase a girl like this? Jing Yu yelled angrily when she was shoved into the carriage by Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen nodded silently and also got into the carriage. Jing Yu stared at Xiao Chen and didn't say anything. Xiao Chen raised his hand and pulled Jing Yu into his arms. He hugged her tightly and said, I've already regretted letting you go for so long. Wait. Jing Yu pushed Xiao Chen and said, You couldn't have been invited by Xiao Yuling, right? Yes. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and asked, Is there a problem? Jing Yu's mouth twitched and she looked at Xiao Chen and said, You guys are in cahoots? Villains in cahoots. Xiao Chen listened to Jing Yu's words and was silent for a moment. He didn't object and just quietly followed beside Jing Yu. He leaned on Jing Yu and didn't say anything. It was as if he was enjoying it. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen and couldn't scold him anymore. She raised her hand and pinched Xiao Chen's face, but there was a faint smile in her eyes. When they returned to the prince's residence, Xiao Chen carried Jing Yu out of the carriage. He even carried her into the room. Xiao Chen, you better walk. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen with red cheeks and said angrily, It's still daytime. Chapter 1432. I don't care. Xiaochen didn't care at all and threw Jingyu onto the bed. When Jingyu woke up again, it was already late at night. If she wasn't hungry, Jingyu wouldn't have woken up. Xiaochen. Jingyu turned her body slightly and looked at Xiaochen, who was lying beside her with his eyes closed. She smiled faintly and raised her hand to poke Xiaochen's cheek. Xiaochen responded drowsily. He reached out to Jingyu and hugged Jingyu again. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Are you hungry?" I'm hungry." Jingyu mumbled. "I'm hungry too." Xiaochen said quietly and leaned over to kiss Jingyu's neck. Jingyu smiled and dodged. She pushed Xiaochen and said, "I'm hungry. Go and get me something to eat." Xiaochen slowly raised his head and looked at Jingyu with a slight smile. He leaned over and kissed Jingyu. He stood up and left the bed to find something to eat. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. This saying was indeed true. Many days passed in the blink of an eye. Jingyu finally got used to it. When she heard the news of Shangguan Linglan and Jingyu, she finally let go of the worries in her heart. She followed Xiaochen and prepared to set off. This time, we can't make any mistakes. Jingyu and Xiaochen took a deep breath and said in the study, "Yes, we can't make any mistakes." Jingyu lowered her head and said, "We will set off directly from Tokyo's Imperial City, pass through Jade Pass, and head straight for Nanli. This is to avoid being attacked from the front and back when we face the Holy Family. We must ensure that there are no hidden hands behind us." Jingyu looked up at Xiaochen and Xing Yi and said, "That's right." Xiaochen nodded slowly and said, "This is my initial plan. We will meet at the border of Nanli. Shangguan Linglan and Xing Yi will lead their troops there first. Heli and Theo's troops will follow. We have to take care of Nanli as soon as possible." Jingyu nodded slowly and looked at Xiaochen and said, "But before we leave, there's one more thing. The dungeon." Xiaochen seemed to know what Jingyu was thinking. He smiled and looked at Jingyu and said, "You can do whatever you want. Leave it to me." Jingyu smiled at Xiaochen. She didn't say what she wanted to do, and Xiaochen didn't ask. After Jingyu and Xiaochen separated, they walked towards the dungeon. Jingyu walked down step by step and saw the people locked in 3 iron cages. They were Nailan, Yunjing, and Jit. Nailan was on the verge of death. Her wound was casually bandaged, leaving a trail of blood on the ground. Jingyu slowly walked in front of Nailan. Nailan raised her head to look at Jingyu, and her heart trembled. "Nailan, it's been a long time." Jingyu calmly looked at Nailan. It was as if she was greeting a good friend as she spat out these cold words. "Jingyu, you can't kill me. I'm the poison sect's 3rd miss. If you kill me, the poison sect won't let you off." Nailan stared at Jingyu and shouted, "When did I say I was going to kill you?" Jingyu looked at Nailan in surprise, but there was a faint smile in her eyes. When Jingyu said this, Nailan's eyes lit up. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.